Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Welcome to Side Alpha Podcast for the April edition. Right now, we are, in case you've been living under a rock, we're in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, so we are kind of, I don't want to say shelter in place, that's not what we're doing in the state of Maryland, but the governor did give us a stay-home policy, so that's kind of where we are right now with we're at our stay-home policy. So with that being said, this is the first podcast I've ever done over the phone. I know in the past we've done podcasts with some other, or I've participated in podcasts with other people over the phone, and they just sound awful. So I'm hoping that I can post-production edit this thing so I have some good levels so I can keep up with the how the rest of my podcasts will sound, how good they sound when I'm person to person. So the governor of Maryland, Governor Hogan, has asked us to have the stay at home unless you're an essential employee. Obviously, being a firefighter, I'm an essential employee, an essential employee. But when I'm home, we're kind of hunkering down in the house, and we need to do our social distancing. So without further ado, my guest today is my buddy Sam Villani. He was on here a couple of months ago. And we are practicing extreme social distancing. So I think as the crow flies, he's about 5 miles from me. On the road, it's probably about 7 to 8 miles. So Sam, welcome to Side Alpha Leadership again.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me on, man.
So a few things have changed since the last podcast that you and I did together. We had talked about mentoring, and at the time you were a captain. Now you still are a captain, but you've actually assumed a new role. So why don't you go ahead and let the dozens of listeners that are tuned into this podcast know exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, around I guess a month and a half ago, I received a call and from the C-shift duty operations chief where we work, asking me if I would consider a long-term temp spot in the 2nd Battalion as the chief there. And I asked him if I could call him back. I called home, talked to the real boss, my wife, and she agreed that it was a great opportunity. And I immediately called him back and accepted. For 2 weeks, I was actually, as you very well know, in your spot, in the 1-4 relief spot, and got my first fire. Got my first fire in the 4th Battalion last, a week and a half ago now. And it was a 2-alarm fire in a garden apartment that I had actually ran fires both as a volunteer in the early 90s and as a career firefighter in the early 2000s. So I was very intimately familiar with those gardens. And I think between that and having a very heads-up battalion chief in the car with me, Monty Fitch, and us both knowing those buildings very well, and the first two companies, engine and truck, were on the spot. They did 100%. I couldn't have asked for any better outcome. And it's one of those things where you kind of expect your first fire to go terribly. And this one went great. There's always room for improvement. And my biggest thing is I need to slow down. I need to slow my pace down a bit and listen a little more. But other than that, I think it went very well. And now I'm parked in the 2nd Battalion on C shift. And I worked my first shift there the other day, and I'm starting to get my sea legs in the 2nd.
Yeah, I know. We'll talk about your fire you had in a minute. Just to let people know that my position, I've changed positions as well. I moved on as the 1st Battalion chief, or the Battalion 1 chief on the C shift, and that opened up an opportunity for Sam to get bumped up into my Tuesday-Friday spot, and he did that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and now he's the C-shift battalion chief in the 2nd Battalion. And so before we talk about your fire, there was another call that you ran, and you didn't tell me about it, but a lot of people told me about it, was the I guess it was more of a slope evac or a scree evac there off of it was actually over an embankment over a bridge down in a little the Northwest Branch And for what I heard, I know you ran the call and those guys were out doing their thing, or the truck companies were doing their thing. And all I heard was that Sam was up on top of the bridge like a cheerleader cheering us on. And, you guys are awesome. You're doing a great job. And so I just kind of started laughing. I said, yeah, that's Sam, the cheerleader all the way. So, but I thought it was kind of cool because you don't really get that much in the fire service, of guys or gals that are in these management positions or these leadership positions actually being there and cheering the guys on and saying you're doing a great job and awesome and this and that, without gushing or being fake. I mean, you're 100% genuine when you do stuff like that. I've known you for a long, long time. So I thought that was kind of cool to hear. When they told me that, I wasn't really surprised. I'm like, yeah, that's Sam. But a lot of the people that were on the scene of that call were like, yeah, man, he was like jumping up and down and clapping and saying, you guys are awesome, doing a great job. So kudos to you, Sam, for, recognizing when the guys are doing a good job. You tell them, hey, you're doing a good job. We've talked about that on a couple of these shows where we talked about leadership and the traits that leaders have is praise your people. Nobody wants to hear the bad. We always hear the bad, but hear the good. So kudos for that. Now, moving to this garden apartment fire that you had, I actually listened to it from time of dispatch to the on-scene report to just about when you declared the fire under control. So I was probably listening for about 45 minutes straight through, and I was very impressed. I was like, all right, let me find something that I could critique him about because he's going to call me. Let me see if I can't find something that I can give him some, hey, you can do this the next time. But, to be honest with you, and I'm not saying this because you're my friend, but you did a really good job. You maintained the composure. You were calm on the radio. You asked for information. If you didn't hear something, you told them to repeat it back to you. You made sure that they understood the objectives that you were giving them. You ended up having quite a bit of fire. I talked to the guys actually yesterday because I was working overtime in the 4th Battalion, and they said yeah, we had a living room, a dining room, a hallway, and a back bedroom all on fire. They had to fight their way into the apartment. Plus, you had some leapfrogging from the floor to the floor above, and you had fire on the floor above, and you managed to keep it out of the cockloft, and it was fantastic. So, I really can't say that I heard any criticisms that I could give you for your first fire that you were in charge of. You did a really good job, and you sounded like you'd been doing it for a long time. And I'll touch on that in a second. But I also did talk to Monty because the next day, I was working, and the first thing Monty said was, "Yeah, Sam did a really good job." And Monty, he doesn't say anything good about anybody, but he said you did a really good job. So congratulations on that. Now, what I want to ask you is, and for those that don't know, we go all over the country with Capital Fire Training, and we do a variety of different training topics. And one of the things that I do is incident command, and we'll go out. We'll talk about NIMS, we'll talk about incident command, and then we give them radios and we let them give on-scene reports. And then at the very end, we have like 10 scenarios that we put together through fire simulation program, and we give him a radio, and Sam is my radio guy. He's in the back of the room. He's dispatching calls. He's playing the 4 engine companies. He's playing 2 truck companies, the rescue squad. He's playing the other battalion chiefs that are coming, the EMS crews, and anybody else that I tell him to be. So he's role-playing all this stuff. So I have to ask you, do you think that, being involved with that for the last few years that we've done that, did it help you a little bit, or did it keep you like, hey, this is what I have to do. I know how to use these charts. I know how to, get information from people and all that. So did that help you at all?
Yeah, I think 3 things, and I've thought about this a lot lately, especially 3 things have definitely influenced my me developing my style. And I'm still in the development mode of my. Now I probably won't run another legit fire for 6 months or something like that, but So 3 things. One is certainly my interaction with you, not only just helping as the radio dispatcher, but seeing what you do, listening to you on the fire ground. I listened to you since you were a lieutenant back at 6, right?
Yeah.
So I've listened to you come up, and then as an incident commander, of course, the first fire, and I've probably listened to that thing a dozen times, was a 9300 Piney Branch, and I the way you handled that. I'm like, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to show up, as a relatively new battalion chief, or I thought mine would be 6 months down the road, not last week, and be able to stay calm on the radio, direct my resources, make sure I have accountability for everybody, and not just check the boxes. And I don't mean just, we do have, I think checklists are huge, but we're not just checking the boxes. We're not letting the boxes direct us. It's kind of like computer-aided dispatch. You don't let the computer dictate your dispatch, and you let it aid you in your dispatching process. But so that definitely helped. And then I've been a dispatcher for both our battalion chief promotional process, been a role player there as well, and then also with our command competencies program since its inception. I've been a dispatcher off and on, and now here in the past couple of years of coming back. I took a 2-year break from everything, as you very well know. When I was running the recruits, it was just such a busy job. I didn't want to I didn't want to take any time from that job. It was so busy and so important. The newest folks coming through, you wanted to make sure they had everything you needed, and that was a full-time job.
You're also being a dad.
Yeah.
Don't forget you were also being a dad at the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and add being a new dad, and then and the third thing is I've had a lot of really good mentors, and it goes back to yourself. A lot of people who I've been in fires with, I've been on difficult fires with. Back to Monty, it was so neat being in the car with Monty. I mean, in February of 2001, when I made my grab, I transmitted a mayday after I handed that baby out the window because I had tossed, like that. This back when I thought tossing meant you tossed everything around, and I tossed the basement looking for a second child that I thought was down there, and actually the twin was upstairs. Got disoriented. The fire took off. There wasn't a line down there. Transmitted a mayday. It did not go through because it was on a radio I had acquired. It was that we didn't have a portable radio for the E3 position at the time. And the first person down there and the person that got me up out of there was Monty. So I've had this, I think, kindred brotherhood relationship with him since then. And, there's a handful of folks on the job today that in my world can do no wrong. And you're certainly one of them. Monty's one of them. Kelvin Thomas. There's a handful of other guys that have really just been true friends, true mentors, and been very honest with me. And I think that's helped develop who I am. And I'm ever the grateful for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. The one thing about the fire, and you know this as a fact because this is what I usually end my class on. I tell people, you can burn an entire row of apartments or an entire row of townhouses to the ground as long as you sounded good doing it. No one will ever question you. And 100%, you sounded really good on the radio. You had a lot of fire in front of you. You were putting the guys in harm's way. That's what they signed up for. But when you're sitting in the car and you're putting those people in harm's way, it's an armpit sweating moment, that's for sure. And it's a nail biter, and you want to make sure that they're going to be safe. And your voice never got above calm, and when you stay calm on the radio, you're calm on the fire ground. That transmits that calm, that everything's going good, and keep doing business as usual. So, good job on your first fire, and believe me, there'll be more to come. The cool thing is that you being in Battalion 2 on C shift and I'm Battalion 1 on C shift, we'll get to run with each other every now and then, so that should be cool too.
I can't wait for that.
I'm really looking forward to beating you in your area too. So.
Well, considering I did my bump up training with you and I rode as the passenger, you're a better ace behind the wheel than I am. I'm still a nervous Nelly, having not driven emergency apparatus for quite a long time. Being on the right front seat for I guess 12 years. Transitioning to driving something with lights and sirens and kind of being on your own. I'm definitely I'm not timid, but I'm trying to do it right and not overdo it, because it's as you very well know, you get that vehicle behind you and it's very easy to kind of overdo it a bit, and I don't want to put
especially
myself
the new battalion vehicles they're pretty fast. So
I had no
definitely
idea.
keep your head about you and don't get complacent, because that's when you get into issues, and drive accordingly. You definitely don't want to drive like a maniac. So
no.
Let's transition a little bit. One of the things that I had talked about, when we're talking about taking on this position as management or as a leader, moving into that battalion chief role, you went from managing 7 to 8 people on a 24-hour basis to about 40 some people on a 24-hour basis in less than a day. It's kind of like getting promoted from firefighter to lieutenant. You went from right in the back of the bucket to the front seat. So a lot gets thrown out at you. So what I want to talk about a little bit is connecting with your people, and then we'll finish this podcast and we'll talk about the expectations that we would like to throw out to our people, what we expect of them, and then kind of let them know what they can expect to us. Now, like I told you a little while ago, I've become a pretty voracious reader lately. I've gravitated towards a lot of the military books because they don't seem to be as subjective as the fire rescue books. They're kind of based in the military doctrine, whether it be Army, Navy, or Air Force or Marine Corps. They kind of focus around the things that they took from basic training and officer candidate school and NCO classes and stuff like that. So one of the books that I'm reading right now is called The Military Leader. It's by Andrew Steadman. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Andrew Steadman, he also has a website called The Military Leader, as well as a podcast called The Military Leader. So anybody that can hear my voice, I highly recommend you going back and listening to his podcast, because he gets a lot of really good people on there. They're captains and majors, colonels, lieutenant colonels, generals, retired, active duty. He gets a lot of really good people on his podcast. So I went and bought his book, and I'm kind of halfway through it right now. But one of the chapters that I'm on right now is called 14 Simple Ways to Connect with Your People. And I read through it, and what I like to do is, when I'm reading this military stuff, is how can I parallel that, or how can I kind of fit that into the fire service. And I had Shelley Wheeler on here last month, and we talked a little bit about the military, when she was in the Coast Guard, and how can you take those lessons you learned in the military service and kind of fit that into the fire service. And it's actually a lot easier than people think it is, minus all of the the yelling and screaming, because we don't even do that in recruit class. We're not drill instructors, but I wanted to go through a few of these things and kind of break them apart and see where they fit into the fire service and how we can kind of take what these examples are and move them through. So there's 14 of them. A couple of them don't fit the fire service, but the majority of them do. The first one was learning your people's first name. And it's real easy as a lieutenant or a captain when you have, anywhere from 5 to 8 people on your shift. Yeah, you pretty much, that's your family, and you know who they are and you know everything about them. But when you're dealing with 40 people, it can get kind of difficult. So at a minimum, I make sure that I know all my captains and lieutenants, because those are the people that I'm going to first, and then I can go from there. But I think it's important that you learn the people that you are going to be, responsible for. Their first names. So when you do have to sit down with them, you can have personal conversations, because we run into personal issues in the fire service. You want to be able to connect them on that basic level of not just boss to subordinate, but more of person to person. What do you think, Sam?
No, absolutely. I think we also have a distinct advantage in that not only have we been with one agency for, you for what, 32 years, and me for 20. We know a lot of the folks that are in either senior firefighter positions or master firefighter, lieutenant captain, and on up. It's knowing, and we also have another advantage in that we teach the recruits. So we know, there was a gap of recruits that I didn't teach. I did the didactic portion of RC 37, and then 38, 39, and 40 I didn't have much dealings with, and 41 was my first class I ran as the recruit guy. But so there's not many folks on this job that I don't already know at least first name. So you think about the military, they could transfer you to the other side of the world. And I know in talking to Dave Braun and some of the other Marines, you end up in theater or in a I don't know, battalion, company, whatever, and you might know one or two folks from either basic training or from AIT or whatever the specialty schools, or from prior deployments. But most of those folks you're having to learn. And certainly as a commander, you're probably going in there and starting anew. minus maybe a few people. So we have that advantage, but it is huge because it shows it at the very base level. It shows that you care for them, and going back, just taking a quick step back to mentors. My battalion chief in the 1st Battalion on the HF, Mark Davis. I've tried to emulate as much of his leadership style as possible. I think he does it very well, and he's very personable with the folks in the firehouse. He definitely knows first names. He always defaults to being the battalion chief. But for example, like on my shift back at 1, Jason Mello is a big Pats fan, a big football guy, and Chief Davis will trade blows. He's a huge Ravens fan. They'll trade blows back and forth about football, and that's just one example of many. But he's developed that rapport, and really that's what it is. You develop a rapport with those folks because God forbid something bad happens. As they say, I guess the term these days is things go sideways. Something goes sideways, and you're having to deal directly with the outcome of that through one of those firefighters that you're ultimately in charge of. You're the captains and lieutenants or their primary supervisors, but you're the tertiary supervisor, and it really falls on your shoulders. So it's very, very important to establish that rapport early on. And I did my first set of rounds, the other day, and I'd say fully 90% of the folks I know or have had interaction with, and then another like 50% I've been in situations with: fires, recruit school, trouble off duty. I mean, not bad trouble, carrying on back when we used to carry on and that kind of stuff. But it's funny. I just looked, I did a quick size of the battalion that I'm running right now, and I felt pretty comfortable with the folks, at least with knowing names. And there were only a few people I didn't know their first names. So yeah, that's huge.
I think, we had talked when we talk about leadership and we talk about respect and how you have to earn that. I think that's a huge avenue to take, or a pipeline to become a respected leader, when you start knowing who the people that are working for and with you are. It shows those guys, and firemen never show their feelings, but it shows them in the back of their mind. They're like, that guy knows who I am. And I think that goes a long way. I knew, kind of getting off topic a little bit, when in my younger days, I played hockey all the way up until I was like 40-some years old. And one gentleman in particular, he used to play, I want to say he played for the Pittsburgh Penguins, ended up over in Laurel as a hockey coach. His name's Nelson Burton. And so I played on his teams for years, and he always knew me by name. But I guess I stopped playing for Nelson and started playing for our fire department league. So it was probably, I want to say, maybe 6 or 7 years I hadn't seen him. And out of the blue, my wife and I were at a Caps game down in D.C., and he came walking up. I'm like, "Hey, Nelson, what's up?" And he said, "Hey, Dave, how you doing?" And it just struck me as like, wow, that guy remembered me out of the hundreds and hundreds of adults and kids that he that play for him. And it's funny because I said the same thing to Brian Vane, who was your master down there at One Engine. Brian plays hockey, and so does his boy. Knows Nelson Burton, and he said that guy's phenomenal. He knows everybody on all the teams. And it's that kind of memory. And here's a guy, a hockey player, who was, took a lot of blows to the head, yet his memory is still working really well. I'm lucky if I can remember my kids' names. But
I want to say he's still coaching, right?
He probably is. I think he's over in Piney Orchard or something.
Okay. Yeah, I know Brian has mentioned, he's definitely mentioned him and mentioned his style. And, he mentioned, I specifically remember him mentioning that he's, if you didn't know anything about hockey and didn't know anything about the kids or the coach, you'd think he's kind of hard on them, but they love it. And I think it's almost that kind of thing. Like it's, that might be their first adult interaction with somebody that's not their parents, that's held them accountable for something after he's taught them something, and then seen that come to fruition and seeing the yield of it. And for me, I don't know much about hockey. If I went in there, I'd be like, damn, that guy's kind of a hard ass. But
yeah, that's one of the things I can say about Nelson is as I've always viewed him as a really good leader. I would always have strived to at least remember all the people that I come in contact with. And, you and I, we teach all up and down the East Coast, and we go out to Indiana, we go down to Nashville, and we meet all these people, and it's like, you're like, hey, Dave, how you doing? I was like, hey, man, what's going on? I have a hard time remembering who they are. And there's one lesson that I did learn from Frank Ritchie. He said, instead of telling somebody, hey, nice to meet you, he said that can end up into this kind of embarrassing situation where when somebody walks into your classroom and they say, hey, how you doing? And you go, hey, nice to meet you. And that guy's already met you, say, 6-7 months ago or even a year ago. It basically, you just told that guy, you're not important and I have no idea who you are. He said, think of a different type of greeting as opposed to, hey, nice to meet you. And say, hey, man, thanks for coming. Hey, I really appreciate you being here type of deal. So that way you don't kind of alienate that guy that even though you don't remember what his name is. And that's definitely the one thing is you got to learn your people's names. That's a great avenue to start to become a respected leader. And, so I would have anybody, if you got to do cue cards, we have an advantage. We have our telestaff program. I can go on the computer and see who's working that day or who's on my shift, and I can write everybody's name down, and I can go through the cue cards. I might not be remembering the streets and the running routes like these guys that are sitting at the table and they're going out of their way to learn the running routes by heart. It's the least that a leader or a supervisor can do is to make some cue cards of the people that you work with and learn who they are and their station assignment. So there's my lesson, my homework assignment for the many people that are listening to this is to go out there and learn your people's names. Kind of moving on into the next part, staying with the same theme, is learning the spouses or significant others' names. How important is that to you, Sam, or as a new your next role in leadership to know the spouses' names? What's the advantage of that?
No, it's huge. As a company officer, it's pretty easy because you develop such a tight knit rapport and relationship with those guys. Like I've only been separated from one engine for 4 weeks now. And, I could, I know so much about them. They know so much about me. It's minus riding the fire trucks with them. And granted, during this time, I wish I was with them as much, being in the car, you're not directly, I think our chances of getting COVID are not direct, but we still, our degree of interaction in the firehouse, I think we would get it through what I guess they would commonly call community transmission. But I wish I was with them because I know they're going through a very difficult time. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. Our first due without COVID was very stressful and high speed, as you very well know. And part of it, I love this opportunity and I'm enjoying it, and I hope it does lead to promotion. And I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be more honored or happier that the department reached out to me and thought of me. I really, I'm very self-deprecating, so I think I got to the point there for a little while where I was like, maybe I'm not going to get promoted, and I was fine with that. It's a win-win. I love my shift. I love 1A. I love everybody on that shift like a brother, and knowing their spouses, knowing their kids, it's huge because I've been, as you very well know, I've been in the hospital a handful of times, and most recent, the last time I was at the hospital was at the burn center for a burn, what they thought was a burn inhalation. Thankfully, it was not. But Mark Mecklin, who's a very close friend of mine, knew my wife Maria, and knew her well enough that he shot over and picked her up and had her down at the burn center literally before a lot of other folks that probably should have been down there made it there. And it's huge. You've got to know. God forbid you don't know and something happens and you're calling that spouse and you're saying, hey, John or Brian or Sam or whoever is hurt, and I need you to come to the hospital, or I need you to do this or that. And it's, you don't want the worst thing in the world happening to that family for you that to be your first interaction with that spouse. And the spouses have to know that you are the captain. Like it's even at like the holiday party, the guys remarked this last Christmas party that one engine had on A shift. I sat in the back and they said, "You look like a proud papa." I was just watching everybody doing their thing. And I'm the captain. I'm the senior. I'm the senior guy on the shift, and I'm the oldest guy on the shift. It's a first for me in my entire career where I've been the most senior, the company officer, and the oldest. Usually, it's there's somebody older than you on the shift that's that's spent more time in the ranks than you. But yeah, it's huge. There's no replacement for it. There's nothing. There's no excuse for not knowing it. Even if you've got to reach out to them to get that familiarity right off the bat, it's very important, everly important.
I know you talked about the hospital, and that's kind of the next bullet point that Andrew Steadman had in this chapter was go to the hospital, and that goes beyond just like, hey, one of your guys was hurt on the job and you're going to go to the hospital. Of course you're going to do that because you're their direct supervisor and that's what you're going to do. But it's also the off-duty things that happen, births of a child, maybe a spouse is sick and in the hospital, maybe you got hurt off duty and you're in the hospital, or who knows what is going on. To go to the hospital and to just be there not only shows that you're a human being and that you have compassion, but you actually care for your people and you genuinely care what happened to them. I know that I visited a friend in the hospital who literally had just had their baby probably about 2 hours prior, and I was already in the Columbia area, and I hadn't even had a shower yet. Yeah, it was you. Hadn't even had a shower yet, and I told my wife, I was like, "You want to go see Sam and Maria?" And he's like, "Yeah." So we got there, and I was really upset because I thought I got there before your in-laws got there. So
that's all right.
I was like, "Wow, I can't be the first one to see the baby," but no, they had gone out to get something to eat.
I know there's, and again, family dynamic, right? It's some people are very private, and you learn that through this rapport that you develop with your people. But but how I am. I mean, everybody's family to me, and that meant the world that you guys came through. It was so awesome, and especially because we're kind of new to Howard County. We just moved out here from Baltimore. Having you close by was huge. Having the other folks that. Even on my shift, I've got Kyle Schultz out here. Martino just moved north, but he lives in Columbia. These guys are, all the guys on my shift. But, it was nice. It was, it's huge. It means so much. It really coming from the receiving end, and how you feel when you come in as the boss or as the colleague or mentor or whatever. It means so much. It really puts. I always talk about, warms your heart, and it really does. That really, really warms your heart.
And and you need to be genuine too. So if one of your guys are hurt and you go and visit them in the hospital and you tell the family members, whether it be the mom and dad or the significant other or spouse or whatever, if you give them that, if you need anything, please let me know. You got to genuinely mean that, because they may call you and say, hey, we're having a problem with this time card, we're having a problem with leave, we're having a problem with this. It's your responsibility to reach out and make sure that gets taken care of. I know when RJ got hurt, we spent a lot of time at the hospital, more time than I'd ever want to spend at the hospital. But we did. We spent between being there at shock trauma in Baltimore and as well as the National Rehab Hospital in D.C. But that's what you do. Obviously RJ is a friend and a colleague, but you got to go and you got to go to the hospital, and not just for the sad events, when somebody's hurt, but like for the birth and things like that. So you got to get out there as a leader. You need to make sure that your people understand that your caring for them goes beyond the four walls of the firehouse and the 24-hour shift that you're there for. He talked about paternity leave. We get that all automatically for our guys, but you need to be able to guide your people to get them on paternity leave, because running through the different types of leave that we have the Family Medical Leave Act, and we have paternity leave, and the lengths of time. There's some confusion for some of the newer guys that are new in the fire service that have kids or have babies. And it's your responsibility to guide them through that, so that's one less stressful thing. So for the people out there that are in these management and leadership positions, you need to make sure you're familiar with the different types of leave that are offered to your people, and step up to the plate. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go to them and say, hey, are you okay on these types of leave? And hey, do you need some help navigating this kind of stuff? We'll go through that. So I know we don't have to dig into that, but the next one was the holiday and anniversary cards. Now, I know I've sent Christmas cards out to my friends and things like that, but how important is it, Sam, for you to not only know the guys that you work with, their birthdays, but maybe even their anniversaries, so you can at least send them a card, if at least an e-card or something like that in the email. What you think?
No, yeah, it's huge. It goes back to tying yourself. I've been working on this, not working on it, but it's the way I communicate how serious it is to be tight with the people on your shift. It's like, we come into work, we took an oath, and we come into work and we're going to risk our life for a complete stranger. Why would we not be as tight as we could be with the people we work with? It's like, you could get into the firehouse and 5 minutes later you're pulling me out of a hole in a floor into a burning basement, or I'm doing that for you. It's just and I think we take it for granted sometimes, because again, it goes back to that, invincibility complex that some of us have early on in our careers. You're able to kind of hone that in with your age and experience, but just that extra little bit. It's showing that, hey, not only do I know who you are and care about who you are and care about your significant other, but I care enough to say, hey, I send cards to my family on these occasions, so I'm going to send them to my second family at the firehouse as well. I'm deficient on that. The way I do it, the holiday party, I think is a way I'm able to kind of get, I definitely get a lot of face time with the families, with the significant others. And I do a Christmas gift every year for the shift. I think most people do this, but I do I hand screen printed sweatshirts the year before last. And this past Christmas, I designed it and had it made commercially, but it's that's my piece. I get that out there, to kind of, it shows that you care, but it's something I want to do. I love to do this. And I think the folks on the shift enjoy it. And I think that it transmits. I think that the spouses know, hey, well, he's doing all this stuff. He must really love these guys. And I really do. And I think they know it. I know without a doubt. I mean, I was the officiant at one of my firefighters' weddings. I'm going to be the officiant at another one of my firefighters' weddings here at the end of May, provided we flatten the curve, which I'm hoping. I'm hoping every day we do.
Indeed.
But so that's the way I do it. Everybody's got their own style, but I tell you what, since you've mentioned that, and I've heard it before, but I really didn't stick. But I mean, it's definitely something I'm going to put my head to do. My wife's really good at cards, so it might be one of those things where I enlist her in helping me, because she is way better with that style of communications than I am, and that's she sends. I mean, we were sending I don't know, and you know how it works. You look at your card count for Christmas, you're like, holy geez. And we do send cards. We sent cards to everybody on the shift. We sent cards to people that have been on shift with, that have been in the recruit school with. You look at your card count, you're like, it has 250 cards, but all 250 of those people, you'd give the shirt off your back for, and you love, and it's huge, man.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the wife ends up knocking them out, and I do my part where I go mail them. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because if you want to get all this information, you're going to have to buy the book, The Military Leader. So I'm not going to read off all of those points. But one of the last points I want to hit is something that you and I have done together for a long time, and I started it with actually Brady Miller, who's a captain down in Tacoma. But is help your people prepare for the promotional exam. It's one of those things that for lieutenants, captains, and battalion chiefs, I have always offered my assistance if you want it. I tell them, here's the date. You can come to me, and we'll spend the entire day, and we'll talk about incident command. We'll talk about taking command. We'll talk about giving on-scene reports, all the things that you need as an officer riding that front seat. We'll talk about making decisions and things like that, and you've been a part of that with me for the last few years. And how do you think that and I know I watch these guys because I tell them, let me know how you do on the exam. I'm curious to make sure that I'm hitting the right points, and I'll even ask them, hey, did anything that I do help you? And if they got one thing from me that helped them, I think that's mission accomplished. How have you received that, Sam, and the stuff that you sent through when you've gone through your exams? Do you think that stuff is helpful? And there's other people out there that do it. It's not just me. And the funny thing is that now I kind of coordinate my time around the other chiefs that are doing stuff. So we're not doing it together. So all these people that are taking these promotional exams can actually hit the different chief officers that are doing stuff. What's your take on this?
Yeah, no, it's great. And, I've always been thankful that you've included me in. And it's one of those things that I hope to be able to do one day, for my people directly. And you've opened it up countywide. You really, the past couple you've had, and I remember the battalion chief one. So it was not the list I'm on, but the previous list. And I had more than one battalion chief that got promoted off that list that were in your class come up to me and say, and I know they said it to you too, but how helpful that was. And it's, you only have a finite amount of time, so you're only getting, a handful of incidents in, and they might only run one or two. But what that does is it springboards their learning. So they're able to take what they did there and apply it. And these days, there's so many ways you can do it. It used to be you'd had to get scanning pictures and kind of do it that way. And now there's these apps, the whole Sims You Share, which seems to be pretty popular, and it works very well. And the fact that you can even do it on your phone is huge. But I think it springboards their learning. It kind of gives them somebody who's, hey, well, this person cares enough. I'm going to go to this thing, and then they leave there like, wow, I never thought about this or this or this, or didn't really know exactly how to go about setting themselves up for success with that whole command sequence. And outside of doing the command competencies program, which also is a great, think about that in and of itself, how valuable that is as a program to us as command officers. It's huge. I've learned so much from that program alone, just by being a dispatcher. It's crazy. But yeah, so it's seeing people go through those processes and take advantage of people reaching out like yourself. And seeing them succeed, because they're that serious. They're going to take a weekend. They're going to take an afternoon away from their family, away from all their obligations to better themselves, and then develop from there. It's awesome, as it really is.
Yeah, and I enjoy doing that. And I've always said that I've had a lot of people help me through my career. So I truly believe it's my obligation to pass on what I learned, and to try to help people that want to move to that next level. And, I truly have tried to impress upon people that we can't have this mentality of, well, I got mine, so I'm going to put my arms around it and not try to better the people around me mentality. It's got to be, I got promoted and I need to pass on what I learned to the next generation, because let's face it, we're not going to be here forever. I'm not going to be here forever, and I want the people that are coming up behind me to be comfortable and competent at doing their job. I'm not saying that I'm the end all be all and I know everything, but I want to make sure that the people that are coming into this position are comfortable and have some of the tools that they can build off of, as opposed to just coming in cold. And I think that, I put it out there a canvas email to all the people that are interested in taking the test, and I tell them I'll take the first 25 people that send me back an email saying that they want to be in, and I usually take 30, and it ends up I fill the place with the 30 people, and we run through scenarios all day. So it went from a quick 4-hour program to like an 8-hour day, and I enjoy doing that kind of stuff because I want to make sure that the people that are coming behind me succeed. So again, these were just some of the highlights of that particular chapter. But again, I recommend The Military Leader by Andrew Steadman. Go out and get the book. If you can't find it on your normal places that you go to buy books and things, you can go to his website, themilitaryleader.com, and you can order it through there. So, Sam, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about expectations and kind of when I took over for C Shift from Tracy went up to headquarters. I took over for Battalion 1C, and so I kind of came up with some expectations, and it was just a bunch of bulleted points, but they were pretty self-explanatory. And I was fortunate moving into this particular battalion and shift. I worked in the 1-4 as a relief guy, so I knew all these guys and gals. And they're good. They're good firefighters. They're, they got pride in getting out the door quick. They get pride on getting on the scene and doing their job. Pride in the apparatus, and they actually pride in the station. When you walk in the station, you can just see, the pride that's in the station and how they approach their job. So I kind of wanted to just go over some of the expectations that I have, and maybe some of the expectations that you're looking forward to kind of pushing off to the people that's going to be in your battalion, because it's going to be a long-term detail for you. So these are going to be your guys for a while. I know it's been transient for them, so hopefully this will give them a little bit of stability. So one of the first things that I had talked about was water supply, and for those people that know me, they know I'm a big truck guy, and the JV truck, JV engine company, varsity truck company type stuff, and got to give those guys a hard time. But we all know without a good water supply and getting the hose line to where the fire is, fire's not going to go out. So unless you've got a bunch of cans from the hook and can guy, the fire's not going to go out. So one of the first things that I said, whether it's urban or rural water supply, call your water supply early and ensure that everybody knows the plan. We run into these issues where you call your water supply and then it ends up not being what you think it is, or you don't call the plan, especially under a rural water supply where you're going to be getting a static water source. And if you're not calling where that water source has come from, that's delay in getting water to your fire apparatus and delay in getting water on the fire. So again, it all comes down to that two-way communication. Call your water supply. Call the specific engine company that's responsible for completing your water supply. Make sure they understand and repeat it back to you. That's that simple two-way communication. So there is no mistake on what we're doing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's having the great thing about expectations. I think they're absolutely necessary. And you got to make them pretty. There's general and specific ones. And certainly, the specific ones are ones like that, where it's like, hey, look, one of the things that's aided me in my career, certainly as a company officer, was making sure that water supply plan was figured out en route and made sure it was clear for everybody, and certainly addressing any questions about it en route. And I think, most of our company officers do a great job. They're in the map book. They're kind of still keeping their eye on the road for their driver in case something happens that they don't see. And they're able to communicate on the radio as well. It's a lot going on. And, the whole theory of multitasking, you're not doing everything simultaneously. There's microseconds of splits between your attention. So, but all that's important. And, I've already sent an expectations email out, and it was because I'm the second guy that's been in this long-term relief spot. I wanted to make sure that and I had sat down with the prior guy who got, who had gotten promoted, Paul Lancaster, at a spot to a battalion chief, a permanent spot. His expectations were so spot on that I led with those in my expectations emails. And I said, I don't have much of a different expectation than Paul has for you, but here's a little about me. Here's a little bit about what you can expect from me, because we're all different. But, in the height of what I did was I made a calculated decision. With everything going on with COVID, knowing how much stress that has given these folks, knowing they've had their primary battalion chief be off for an extended period of time, and then having a second person come in, and who's probably going to be there. I'll at least be there a few months, if not longer. And maybe, there's a remote chance that if, depending on how things fall, then I might be promoted in that spot. I'd say there's a slight chance of that. But I wanted them to know that in the interim, that I felt Paul's expectations were so good and so in line with what I would expect, that I didn't want to change it up too much on them, because I didn't want to add an extra stressor to them, because they're already at maximum stress. Everything about this COVID, and not just our response matrix, not just cleaning the firehouse and making sure your folks are wearing their appropriate PPE and all that stuff, but your home life is upside down right now, and some of us have it better than others, and you have to keep that perspective in. So when I sent my expectations out, it really was a reiteration of what Paul had said, and then a little bit about myself for folks that didn't know me well enough, or didn't know maybe what I would expect as a battalion chief. But I didn't want to flip the script on them, and I didn't really need to. I think even if COVID hadn't been there, I certainly would have kept a lot of what Paul had in place, because it was exceptional. And he's like we are. We love this thing. I think we'd sooner die than not do right by it. And he's an aggressive thinking, intelligent, knowing firefighter at the base level, and I think we are too. And so my expectations was my communications was actually wasn't as detailed as it will be when I take a permanent spot, where I know I'll be there for a long time.
That's that's good. I did the same thing with the shift that I was taking over. Tracy, that shift was running really well, and Tracy made sure that they maintained the level that they needed to make sure that they're sticking with what needs to be done on the fire ground, and that they're not complacent. So there wasn't a lot of change that I had to do. All I wanted to really do was just kind of reiterate the things that I felt were important. And even though I told him, I said, these expectations are going to be more of a review, and you may be saying to yourself, well, I'm already doing that, and that's great. I just wanted to make sure that there was no questions. And then I sent those out probably about a week before I was planning on taking over, so they could just kind of have them, kind of go over them if they wanted to, or whatever they decided to do. And then my first shift, I had slated 2 2-hour slots to meet with each half of the battalion on my first day, just to kind of quickly go over the bulleted points of my expectations, and then asked them if they had any questions, and then we went from there. There were some good questions, things that what they had expected from me, also what they kind of expected from to get out of the county, and maybe point out some deficiencies and things that they'd like to maybe look at changing, or things that they would like to work on when it comes to training and things like that. And it was a really productive conversation, and I was actually fortunate enough, instead of just meet with the officers, I was only going to meet with the lieutenants and captains, and I decided, what, let's bring all the people down. So I'm talking to everybody, so not only do they know what I'm saying to their officer and what I expect from the officers, but what they can expect from me, as well as they'll have an idea of what I feel is important on the fire ground. The next thing we talked about was ladders, and being a big truck guy, ladders are right up there with water supply. It's one of the most important things we do on the fire ground, and what we tell everybody is, ladders are for us, and in case we got to get out. So they needed to understand where we were coming from, and we talked about engine and truck work. the expectations for that, and then when we kind of broke down each of those particular expectations, we talked about line placement and selecting hand lines, and as well as the other components that go with truck work, like search and rescue and overhaul and salvage and things like that. All of those things are your bread and butter skills, and those are important. And I think that sometimes, especially in today's fire service where it's so technical and can be kind of complicated, we kind of lose track of those bread and butter things. So I think it's important that we constantly sharpen ourselves on the basics, because 90% of the time, what are we rolling out the door to do? We're going out the door to do our EMS calls, and we're going out the door to do our fire rescue calls. We're not going out the door for these plane crashes into the middle of the street, or tankers that overturn and have gasoline and all over the place and burning, or building collapses, or mass casualty incidents. We're going out for the typical heart attacks and the cardiac arrest and trouble breathings, and we're going out for alarm bells and house fires and apartment fires, things like that. Those are our bread and butter things, and I think that it was important that we continue to hone our skills on the things that we do. And what I told him, I said, I want you to practice and train on the things that we do 90% of the time, as opposed to the things that we hardly ever do, which is the other 10%. What do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I remember that whole edict from a couple our couple chiefs ago. Chief Bowers, who's now actually the chief of my home department in Ocean City, Maryland, but his big thing was execute the basics perfectly. And I think you lead off with that, and the complicated and complex incidents, you can always have company drills, or battalion drills, I should say, now that we're out on battalion level. You can have battalion drills on those things, and you can send them articles about those things and other types of reference. And you can even set up like a quarterly training on some of the complex stuff. But you really got to make sure that those basics are covered, because I think if you hone in on the basics and you foster that learning and that reinforcement, I think it also springboards to the complex stuff. And and you can always mix it in. You got to figure how many years did you do in the 1-4? Was it
7?
7, yeah. So, I would like to think that when if I end up staying in the spot, or if I get promoted into another spot, I'd like to stay there for enough years to where, my first interaction and first year or so with them is focusing on the basics, and then expanding on those complicated things, because and they're all specific to the response districts. In the 1st Battalion, you've got a lot of highways, interstates, that kind of stuff. You think about Rockville, they've got the intercoast, or the interstate pipeline, and the Washington Gas, the tank farm, and Suburban Propane's all their facility, and all the chem bio stuff they have. Every battalion has specific things that you can, as far as complex incidents goes, that you can really hone in on specifically. I like what Chief Davis does. He'll do like tours, but with a handful of companies that will be the first arriving at like one certain target hazard. I know last year, I guess before Christmas, they did the Coca-Cola facility there in 12's area with those companies. Right. that would do that. And we've done a lot of metro stuff because we have metro running through our area. So yeah, I think that's huge. And it goes back to, these are my expectations. I think, I always like to throw in there, I think they're also your expectations of me, because, it kind of throws a little bit of ownership element back into them. If they're not already there, maybe they'll be like, well, yeah, he's right. I really need to focus on this stuff and make sure we're good.
Yeah. And, and that's, what, even with, when we're working with Capital Fire, we're pretty much hitting those bread and butter skills. That's what the people want. They want those ladders, attack lines, the auto extrication, rapid intervention stuff. We get into these rapid intervention drills when we teach these classes, and they're not huge complicated things. It's more like, all right, here's the scenario. I need you to go in and effect a rescue. How are you going to do it? Type of thing. And it's those. I don't want to say a rapid intervention drill or a mayday is bread and butter. It's not. But the engine and the truck stuff and the house fire scenarios and those guard departments, townhouses, and the EMS calls and all that stuff. Those are our bread and butter. That's what we do 90% of the time, maybe even more than that. And I just wanted to make sure that those guys are proficient. And to coin a phrase like Tony Tricarico, who works with us, says, he said, don't practice the skill till you get it right. He said, practice it till you can't get it wrong. And that stuck with me for a long, long time, because that's getting to the point where it's almost automatic, kind of like when you're driving home and you're thinking about 15 different things. And next thing you know, you're pulling up in your driveway. You don't remember the drive home, but you drove home without running over kids on sidewalks and stuff like that, because it's all that in the back of your mind. Well, that's how I want these guys to approach their bread and butter skills. And then without going through all of my expectations, that'll be for another show. One of the last things that I left with my guys, and I found this out when I was early on as a battalion chief, where people would just stress out over stuff that was well out of their control, even out of my control. And that's what I said. Don't obsess over things that are out of your control. Let me worry about that. One thing that came into mind was I had a captain who was at a specific station, and the station wasn't fully staffed. So they had 3 pieces of apparatus they had to get out on the road, but they only had enough staffing to get 2. And this guy just could not get over the fact that they didn't have enough people to get all the apparatus out. And I would tell him, look, you cannot worry about that. As a captain, as the leader of that shift, that station, you have to make decisions and get the right equipment out based on what the call is. We trust you to do that. He could not get over that whole hurdle of, but I can't get the engine in the tower and the ambulance out when we get a building fire. I can only get a couple of things out, and that thing's not going to get out. And that's not good for the citizens. And I mean, he's going on and on. I'm like, God, listen to me, buddy. You can't stress out over that stuff, because you can't change it. I can't change it. So what you can do is worry about what you have and do the best job that you can with what you're given. And he just could not get over that. He ended up transferring out, which was probably the best thing for him. And then we got another captain in there who understood the situation, understood that, hey, on any given day, I'm only going to be able to get 2 pieces of apparatus out of here. It's not my fault. I didn't do this. I know the higher-ups know about it, but I can only do the best that I can do with the amount of people that I'm given. And I will make the decision to take the correct apparatus based on the call that's dispatched. And that's the perfect answer. So that's what I told these guys. Don't stress out over these things that you can't change, because all that's going to do is give you heartburn on things that you can't change, where you should be focusing on the things that you can do something about. And that's training your people and making sure they're ready for the next level.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's you try to give folks going into those newer assignments, those unique assignments, as much intel as you can. And sometimes, I think it goes down to your personality types. I know I think we all know, and I think anybody listening to this can think of an area or a station where the resources aren't optimal, and how easy it is to get caught up in trying to find a solution, when really you need to focus on A, the primary mission of getting the rigs out the door, and B, really, I guess A should be your personnel. You got to focus on them, and then B is getting the rigs out of the door, and the rest of it is like you said, that's stuff that falls on our shoulders. I've certainly started to learn. It's the battalion chief is a very unique position in our organization, that we're getting feedback from below and from above, and I call it like a double funnel. The buck really does stop at you, because you're not only communicating the department's wishes to the members, you're not their initiatives, their expectations, but you're also communicating the issues above. Some of them can be fixed and some of them can't, and you got to really, it's hard sometimes. There's certain people you'll never get that through to. It's like they're gonna worry to death about those things. But those folks are great in other positions where they don't have to worry about that. You got to find that person that can go in there and focus on what's important, and be able to kind of filter out the stuff that could it could consume you if you let it, but you can't let it. And that's important. It's very important.
Well, we're at that time, Sam. We've been at it for about an hour, and I like to keep these at an hour so people can listen to them when they go down the road. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time. You're at home and today with your wife and your kid, and I know you're working on your lawnmower. You sent me the pictures of you working on your lawnmower, but I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about some of the stuff that I think is important, and it goes to help kind of mold these guys and girls that are coming up through the ranks, of giving these leadership traits, and hopefully some of the stuff that we hit on, the people that are listening can take and move forward with it. And again, hopefully the next month's podcast, we won't be this in the midst of this. I'm sure the pandemic will still be around, but maybe we'll be able to move about a little bit more. If not, I think I've got this remote recording down. Hopefully the levels are good. It's not the optimal way to do it, but it's the safest way for what we're doing right now. So again, Sam, sure. Congratulations, on moving up into your new assignment. Hopefully it'll become permanent for you. And congratulations on your first fire on your second shift. And again, I'm glad that you are on the same shift as me. Same Kelly Day too, I believe, Friday.
Yeah,
and
man.
On top of that, living close and everything, hopefully you can come and we can have a front porch beer, and I'm sure I'll have you on the show. So again, Sam, thanks a lot for taking your time and being on the show with me.
I really appreciate it, brother. It means a lot, man.
All right, and until next month, guys, be safe, and if there's an opportunity to be a leader or put somebody in a leadership position, take it. So with that, have a good, safe month.